It's Formula 1 fever here at Scottish Watches Towers. In pole position, we have Moser bringing us along for the ride. And on the grid, Tudor, IWC, Ulysses Nordan and many more are raring to go. So strap in for some high-octane, fast and furious fun in this edition of the Scottish Watches podcast. Welcome, one and all, to a very special edition of the show. We have been on our travels. It's a thing we weren't really supposed to talk about beforehand, which we kind of alluded to, we teased. And finally, the big day came. Well, the big couple of days came at the weekend, just past. Me and Dave made our way across to Silverstone, down south in England, for the Formula 1. Thanks to the good folks over at Moser. They invited us down, along with, I suppose, friends of the brand from across Europe and further afield. We got to experience not just the racing, not just access at Silverstone behind the scenes there. We got to go to a manufacturer, a facility, a factory, a place where things are created. And we're not talking watches this time, because last year we did the Moser tour, we did the museum, and we did precision engineering, Moser, Hot Launch, that entire group. This time around we went behind the scenes with Alpine, not Alpine apparently, but Alpine, the F1 team that used to be known as Benetton, Lotus, etc, etc. But we should probably check in very quickly with Dave, because there are a ton of watches that we need to get through today. We've got releases coming out of our arse, we've got new releases from Tudor, we've got a new Moser to talk about, plus tons and tons of other things that have happened, and developments behind the scenes with different watch brands within the industry that you may have heard of, but maybe this is the first time you will hear of them. So let's check in quickly with Dave and we'll get straight into these new releases.
Dave is here. Dave is very glad that you said strap in and not strap on, because unfortunately that would have been very misfortunate for the listeners.
Considering the weekend we've had surrounded by lubricants of all viscosities, we would have been fine.
We would have been fine, but for a second week in a row, the viewers of YouTube of this are going to be feasting their eyes on a veritable collection of colours, will we go with? I'm not sure what I'm going to describe your top as this time.
It's Ricky's Technicolor Dream Hoodie.
It's horrific, whatever it is, but we'll go with that. So check out the show notes
Dave,
if you're not watching this.
Orange, Dave? No?
Even that's a stretch for me. Let's just go with, if you want to see what he's wearing, check out the show notes, or if you're misfortunate enough to having your eyeballs burnt out on YouTube, you will be seeing it in front of your very eyes at this point in time. But yes, you're right, we've got lots to cover, many F1 related topics as well, whether it's about watch brands or indeed watch releases. So maybe we should dive right in with something that Tudor are up to.
Yeah, this was a weekend where lots of worlds collided. The universe got itself together. We met up with people we've not seen in a long time, people that stay not that far away, that ended up being on the same plane, going to the same event, but for different reasons. And one of those gentlemen was Adrian from Bark and Jack, a firm friend, a favourite with viewers and listeners alike, and he was going down to check out a new Tudor release. We were there obviously with Moser, we saw our friends that were there with IWC and beyond, but this new Tudor is something that I'm very conflicted about, because I do like it, but I don't know if I like it more than the existing black ceramic Tudor that I own, that I will show in a little bit. So take it away, Dave, and try and convince me this could potentially be my next watch purchase.
Well, I'm going to fail at that already, because obviously you own a certain Tudor watch that's black ceramic that you very much do love. It stayed in your collection a long time, but we'll come back to that. So what are we talking about now? A mere few months ago, Tudor released a black ceramic Black Bay with a blue dial. And everyone went, ooh, that's nice. And then they said, yes, but this is a special edition only for special people, those special people being members of the VCARB, which is the Visa Cash App RB Formula 1 team. And this watch was exclusive to them, and it had a very fetching blue dial, a blue dial where the blue took the hues from the Visa logo, but it was of course not for any of us mere mortals. But apparently they've been listening, and it turns out that they've decided, on the very weekend that Silverstone took place, to release this as a regular production model. So if at the time you thought, I like that, I really want it, but oh dear, I can't get it because I'm a pleb, now plebs are allowed to buy it as well. In terms of the watch, very much what you would expect. It's a 41mm Black Bay, black ceramic case, same as a few other models that are in the range as well. This was the first model, I believe, that also had the META certification from Tudor.
Tudor, you say? Tudor, not Tudor.
Tudor. When we get to Alpine, we'll get to that argument as well, but whatever, we'll go with Tudor, Rolex's little brother. But anyway, yes, they have this watch out, 41mm black ceramic, as I said, but it's got this blue dial that's very much the team dial. Spec-wise, in-house kinesis movement. that's got the METAS certification. Obviously, that also means by default it has COSC certification because METAS is a higher grade than the COSC certification. Still in and around that $5,000, $5,200 price tag. Everything about it I think is very cool. What do you want? You want a collab watch with a Formula One team? You can now buy it. Ricky, on the other hand, I'm going to say for a change that I don't think Ricky is going to think this is better than what he has. He's going to prefer what he has because Ricky's always right.
Wow, we have seen a change in Dave. Ricky is always right. And Ricky has rightfully brought his ceramic Black Shield Fast Rider Tudor along with him that you can see in the show notes, or you can jump across and have a look on the YouTube video. God, this is a good looking watch. I keep forgetting how good this is. Yeah, I'm going to stick with what I know, what I own and what I already have. And yeah, I should probably wear this little guy more than I do at the moment, which is practically never. This was my second long-term keep. When I decided to start collecting watches, I picked this up at the same time as my Batman from the same store, and I got this for an absolute steal. £1,700, brand new, in box with full warranty, yada yada. So yeah, I'm going to stick with this one as much as I do like that new one. And Adrian was singing its praises when we went down there. He got a little sneaky peek behind the scenes ahead of time, as he always does.
So to round out this Tudor, if you like Tudor or Tudor, depending on how you want to say it, you like ceramic, 41mm, so definitely a bit of presence in the wrist, just in and around the 14.5mm of thickness. You like the in-house movement, you like all of the certifications as well, this could be the watch for you. The name doesn't ring so well in my boob. My boob. Look at me.
Your boob. Okay then. If only we could leave the clippers in, it'd be fucking hilarious.
Fucking marvellous, wouldn't it? Okay, so to round out the Tudor or Tudor, depending on how you want to say it, well, if you like ceramic, if you like 41mm watches that are around 14 to 14.5mm thick, if you like Formula One, this very much could be the watch for you. Otherwise, everything pretty much as you would expect from Tudor. That's what we're going to call it now. It's like Tudor. It's like Monday. Anyway, there we go. If you like it, go get it. It's not limited edition. It's not a special edition. You can get your hands on one. Maybe you might need to wait a few weeks because it might, as in typical Tudor fashion, be a bit popular for the first few weeks, but outside that you should be able to pick one of these up at your will. So there we go, that's the first watch that very much follows on with the Formula One theme. That you will hear a lot about Formula One in this episode.
You will, and Adrian was on the same plane as I was going down south. I didn't know he was going along to the event itself until I saw him coming out the John, which is American for toilet apparently, and sat down and I thought, there's Adrian. So I quickly filmed him just to prove that he was there. But we should probably move on from there, and I'm not going to do a Tudor wrist check because that is now on the table and we're going to talk about something else. And you know what? I'm sick and tired of always coming first, being in pole position. So Dave, you can go first. I'll take this over.
Let's put a guess what David's wearing, because we were at a Formula One event and we had been invited by...
Oh, tag. You're wearing a tag.
Tag? Nope, wrong. Nope. We will talk about tag later though.
I meant round your ankle.
You're not allowed on planes with them, I don't think, but international travel and things like that, and by international travel I mean Scotland to England.
Correct.
They frown upon these things. Anyway.
You know that guy that likes the walls in America? We need that wall back up. Adrian's wall, not Adrian Barker, but the other one.
Oh, yeah. Was he not Italian though? Was he not like a Roman, a wee Roman guy, a wee short guy? He came to Scotland because he fitted in with all the other little short guys.
Like you.
We were invited along by Moser, so it only felt right that I should wear one of my favouriteest watches ever, and that is my Moser Streamliner. So I am wearing my Moser Streamliner. Well, I'm not wearing it, I'm holding it in my hand. And this
and
is
congratulations for Dave for working out the exposure controls on his camera after a year.
Thank you very much. Excellent, 10 out of 10. Well done, David. Pat on the head. David can pat his head nicely. So there we go. I am wearing my Streamliner with the Fumi dial. This is one of the early editions. They've obviously reissued the green dial, albeit with the shadow logo on it now. So I'm very happy with this. I love it. It's one of my favouriteest ever watches. Now, I'm going to guess that Ricky isn't wearing his Tudor that he's already showed off, but being Ricky, he gets to come second, and he's got a second watch to show off as well.
Yes, I am also going to pay it back to the guys at Moser for inviting us along. So a big, massive thank you to the team there. We will explain more about what went on behind the scenes, and anyone that's got an interest in watches, mechanical technology will like what we're going to tell you, because as I said, we got to see things you normally don't. We got to ask questions that you're not normally allowed to ask. And like Dave, today I'm wearing my Moser, not Streamliner, but Memeliner. So this is a story that I told and recounted numerous times across the weekend because people hadn't heard the show that we did last year. We actually went across to Moser, not just to the factory, not just to meet Ed, not just to meet the team, but to also go to their museum. And that was also to pick up my newest watch of the time, this one here, the Moser Memeliner. And the story that I've had to tell so many times since then, including all across the weekend, is how this came to be. This is a one of one, a prototype if you want to call it that, because just before the pandemic, when we first brought Moser onto the show and we had Edward on talking about the latest creation, he was a little bit like us. He liked a joke, he liked to laugh, and we came to the idea of doing a bit of an April Fool's joke. We had done things in the past, he had done crazy videos which we will cut in where he took the piss out of himself, the company and the industry at large. If you've seen his one-off pieces since then, oh my god, you've got all kinds of stuff. You've got the nature watch, you've got watches made of cheese, all kinds of things. He loves a practical joke, and the idea we struck upon was to take the Scottish Saltire, create a dial, stick it in a watch, and pretend to release it for April the 1st, April Fools. Unfortunately, we had a pandemic, so that March idea didn't really come to fruition on the 1st of April. The dial sat in a drawer for a couple of years, we forgot all about it, until I actually came across it last year. The time had flown, nobody wanted to make the joke. Well, obviously we weren't making many jokes during the pandemic, so instead of it going to waste or getting scrapped or recycled, I turned around and said, you know what, can we just stick it in a normal watch? So that came to be, it all got put together, and last December, me and Dave made it across international waters to pick up the Moser Memeliner. And if I actually take this one off the wrist, well, first thing I was going to do is actually rotate so you can see that fantastic bracelet, something that my camera seems to do ever so slightly better than Dave's camera, and you can catch the Saltire just glistening and glowing there on the dial. It's a little bit subtle depending on how you hold it and how the light catches it, and if I prop it off the wrist, show you the back, you can actually see through into that crazy movement from Precision Engineering, fully in-house caliber. One of the things Moser do that they don't really like to shout about is they make their own hairsprings. They make them for themselves, they also make them for other folks, including MB&F. They don't tell you the other brands that they do work for because of confidentiality, non-disclosure agreements, and all that stuff. But if you know what you're looking at and you have a look through other movements, I'm pretty sure you will be able to spot things that look a little bit similar. I fully recommend you go back in time to last December and have a watch of the video that we shot over at Moser headquarters and have a listen to the shows we've done with Ed and the team in the past. There we go, that's my wrist check done. It's the Moser Streamliner Memeliner Prototype Edition.
And thank you very much for coming second in this occasion. But outside that, maybe we should explain to people who are listening along or potentially watching on YouTube how we ended up at the Formula One.
Yeah, we got an email saying, hey guys, are you busy on such and such a weekend? And we weren't, because we don't really have a life outside watches and Geneva Watch Days isn't quite here yet. So we replied and went, oh, I haven't got much on, what are you thinking? We thought there was going to be a product launch or there was going to be something cool, maybe an online webinar, but that wasn't to be the case. We actually got an invite down to the Formula One, the British leg at Silverstone, just outside London. So obviously we said yes, we'd love to do this. We jumped on a plane, we headed down there, got to Heathrow, met the team. There were only 3 people from the UK media that I spotted, myself, Dave, and one other journalist. So again, really thankful and super grateful for this opportunity. And instead of going to the hotel and getting pissed before going to the racing, we actually went straight to a factory.
And that factory was in Enston, which is the home of the Formula One team. That Formula One team being the Alpine team, not the Alpine team as I keep calling it, the Alpine team. That's because they're a French brand. And who are Alpine, you may ask? They are I guess we could call them the premium end of the Renault brand. This is the little 2-seater sports car that they make. They've revived the brand back from a good few years ago, and they have now got themselves back into Formula One. And as we know, or if you do follow Formula One, you should know, Renault have a pretty storied history with Formula One. And they have stayed in this same facility over many years. Ricky mentioned earlier, Benetton and a few of the other teams, and some of the best drivers in the history of Formula One have come through Enston. So we got there, and what were we there for? Well, it turns out it's quite a big place. This is not some little shed that they knock together racing cars. This is a building that houses around 1,000 members of staff, and they also have facilities in France on top of that as well. And they do lots of stuff, and we got to see lots of stuff. So, how did it all start off when we got there, Ricky?
Well, it all started off with an explanation of why watches and Formula One are so closely linked, and the story of how Moser became involved in this really expensive, highfalutin game. Behind the scenes, you're usually thinking of folks like LVMH Group, you're thinking of Hublot, you're thinking of Tag, you're thinking of Rolex, guys that have got massive, deep pockets. Moser are a large organisation, but I believe it's around about 120 employees all in across the board that were telling us that. And the way this all came to be was Edward got an email and he thought it was a spam email because it said, "Hey there, we're Alpine, we're looking for a watch sponsor, would you be interested?" And he thought, yeah, sure. Then he spoke to his brother Bertrand and they thought about it for a little while and they thought, what's the worst that can happen? They replied to the email and it turned out to be genuine, pretty much like none of the emails that we get. So a little bit of back and forward happened. Edward asked, "Why did you come and speak to us? There are hundreds of brands out there, Why would you come and speak to just little old us?" The answer came back that the guy at the head, Renault, is a massive watch fan and an even bigger Moser fan.
So he'd been asked to put a list together of potential brands or brands that they should approach, and he did put this list together. And I believe that Moser may have been fairly high up that list. There was a little bit of history there as well, because both Edward and Bertrand's father had, in fact, and I believe still to this day, owns some of the older Alpine cars. So a nice little bit of circular history there, everything coming back to meet as it should. And the deal had been done. I think we're now about 6 months into this deal, and things are looking rosy, certainly from everything that they told us about, much of which we can't talk about right now, but it looks like there's some exciting things coming down the line from the brand. So over the next months and possibly years, I'm sure we'll see some quite exciting developments that are born out of this partnership. They very much stressed, and you can take it with a pinch of salt, but they very much stressed that they didn't want this just to be a transactional arrangement. They wanted it to be something where both sides took something out of it. So it's Moser. They're pretty innovative when it comes to ideas and doing slightly wacky things. So let's hold our breaths and see what comes down the line.
I was speaking with the other folks that were at the racing about all kind of watch stuff and the pegging order when it comes to, and when I say peg, maybe I mean pecking order. Dave's used to the pegging order. We might delete that joke. Anyway, the pecking order or the pegging order, depending which way you feel like it and how close to the weekend it is. In my mind, and the other journalist media folks that were there, we would think F1 at the top of the tree, Richard Mille. Can't really get away from that. Then there was quite a drop down, and you could say it was Hublot next, that you could say it was Rolex next, and then you've got Tag, and you've got other ones. Bell and Ross used to be involved way back in the day. But now Moser are involved in this game. They are pretty much top tier. I would say, obviously, cash-wise, monetary-wise, Richard Mille is top of the stack. But just below them, Moser. And speaking to the actual F1 drivers, there was a lot of interest down in the pits when Moser were announced and watches appeared on wrist of the Alpine drivers, because all the other drivers were looking over going, I don't really know much about that, tell me what it is. And in a short few months of all the F1 races that have happened across the globe already, where Moser have had great publicity, they've already seen a massive uptick in interest from people around the globe.
That was one of the questions that was asked, in fact, because they were extremely open during this visit. There really was no question off limit. Whether they gave you an answer to certain questions like, can I have the full plans to your Formula One car? That was likely to be no, but they weren't upset about you asking any questions. And one of the questions posed was very much about what would come out of this relationship, and if, in fact, Moser thought that this was a good thing for them. And they made it very clear that they have seen an uplift on interest, people visiting the website, people emailing them for information, so can only be a good thing for the publicity of the brand.
And getting back to the actual factory visit itself, 20 years ago, I had the good fortune when I was working with a car magazine of going to McLaren's facility, going behind the scenes. They had just announced, they just launched the SLR in collaboration with Mercedes, and it was all secret squirrel hush hush. But we got to look behind the scenes. We were told not to take our big fancy cameras with us, and back then camera phones had only just come into existence, so they didn't know about them, and I sneaked my Nokia 7250i in with me, and I got potato pictures of behind the scenes. This time around, they knew what was going on. We weren't allowed to take any equipment to record, but we could ask any questions, and I mean any questions. I was drilling deep with one of their technicians about the type of technology they use CAN bus-wise versus a road car and what the differences are. And they told us that unlike what you would find in a production, even a hypercar, the stuff they use is faster. There are more of them. I think he said there was 32 individual networks running through the F1 car. They don't have to deal with things like air conditioning, cruise control, in-car entertainment, none of that stuff. This is all high-performance sensor technology. And I asked, what's the sampling frequency? How many times a second do these sensors deliver data? And they instantly came up with the answers. Nothing was off limits. I don't think anybody that asked anything was told, sorry, we cannot divulge that. It was super open. The only problem was we couldn't film it for you.
Afraid that Ricky might have his secret camera on him again, so we weren't allowed to take photographs. That said, we did have an official photographer with us who was documenting the trip, because obviously he knew what he was and was not indeed allowed to take photographs of, and we have some little video clips of that. So do check out the show notes, and also if you're watching it on YouTube, the wonder that is Gavin will have edited some little bits of that trip in, so you can see. For me, certainly some of the highlights were getting to see all of the technology around the steering wheel, that central hub of technology for the car. So many buttons, so many dials, so many levers, so many little things that you could play with that will probably end up damaging the car if you didn't know what you were doing. Interesting as well to see that some of those parts are standardized. They are issued by the FIA and they have to be integrated in. My other big highlight was watching the 3D scanning, the area where they used a laser and a little gun, very kind of Star Trek-ish, to scan over items, checking for all these plotting points to make sure that they were going to fit. So some great technology at play there, and everything from ultra high-tech, lasers and all sorts of things like that, right down to a guy with a mask welding up titanium exhausts. So there was everything from what you would expect to see possibly at a local garage, albeit probably not with ultra-thin titanium, but then right up to the super high-tech and the aerodynamicists who were working in the office. They were definitely the secret squirrel guys. We didn't get to look at their screens.
Well, we did. We just couldn't take any photos of them. And you're right, going from the absolute craziness of looking at all these ECUs getting programmed, set up, connected to that steering wheel, where there are 1,000,001 wires running off to test oscilloscopes and all kinds of stuff, to the guy that's welding up titanium, showing us the manifolds that they use, the heat treating, the strengthening, the ceramic coatings they use, the different types of metals that perhaps we might see a little bit of a crossover in watches in the future with Moser. I just loved it. I thought it was great, the fact that they took us round and nobody made us feel unwelcome. It wasn't as if we were holding them up. And when I actually pulled our tour guide to the side later on and said, listen, are we getting under your feet here? He says, no, we want people to learn. We want people to experience and understand what goes on here, because you see nothing on television. When we were actually at the racetrack and we saw the 100 people or thereabouts, in my mind, those are the guys that do all the work. I didn't realise there was another 900 plus back down the road. So that was fantastic. We also got to play in one of the F1 sims. I'm not big in video games when it comes to car stuff, because you don't get the feeling of inertia. If, as Dave has done in the past, if you're racing a car around a track in a circuit, even if you'd go-karting, when you come up to that corner and you press the brakes, you get the feeling of when the tyres are going to give, when the brakes are on too much and you're going to skid, you're going to understeer, you're going to oversteer. In a sim, even if it rocks you round, it doesn't have inertia and momentum. So I didn't like playing around with the sim. I did like watching some of the other guys playing that whack-a-mole thing where they tap the lights.
And I agree with you. Yep, really cool racing rig gaming setups there. Probably the only thing you would see that in outside of that environment would be real hardcore gamers who are into their racing games. But even then, whether they could afford that full setup, I'm not entirely sure, but really good fun, especially with the proper Formula One wheel and feedback and all of these things coming, but just not quite the same as the real world. That said, though, the whack-a-mole game of testing your kind of visual and spatial awareness was fun, and there was one individual there who happened to be from France who was exceptionally good at it. Whether he was quite as good as a Formula One driver, I believe he was not, but he was certainly significantly better than pretty much everyone else in the room, and he didn't even break a sweat doing it.
I'll tell you something we did break a sweat with was when we got grabbed, taken into one of the garage areas where there was a Formula One car and a whole load of trolley jacks, and we were told to break into groups of 3, and we were going to see how quickly we could remove a wheel from an F1 car, replace it, tighten it up, and drop it on the deck.
And unfortunately, Ricky initially was maybe slightly hesitant to take part because he may or may not have a damaged body from having smashed it into the ground from a motorcycle one too many times. But in the end, he saw my little flapping eyes looking at him and saying, "Oh, please, Ricky, will you take part?" So he decided to take part. And what did he decide to do? Being the guy that flung the wheel onto the car. Probably the worst thing he could have chosen on the basis of him having a bad shoulder. I ended up with the gun, or should we call it the wheel gun, because there's another funny story we get told about guns. And Caroline, who is the sales manager for Moser within Harrods in the UK, she was along on the trip as well. She was grabbing and tugging that wheel off once I had undone my nuts.
From there, we went to the hotel to get freshened up and sorted out, and we had a live link up to the Formula One race team. There, Pierre, one of the drivers for Alpine, was on hand to answer questions predominantly about the Moser tie-in, and you'd be forgiven for thinking he probably doesn't know a hell of a lot about mechanical watches. Well, perhaps that may have been the case a few months ago, but since Moser got involved, he knows a hell of a lot. He could put a lot of people to shame with his knowledge, and as we mentioned earlier, there may be things in the future that he's involved in to a greater extent. But he was fielding questions from the audience. It was me, Dave, Caroline, as mentioned before, plus a whole host of other people, people from the supply chain for Moser, other people from different places in Europe, different blogs, websites, etc. And nothing, again, was too much hassle. He had all the answers, he was very quick-witted about things, he was saying how there'd been some problems during testing, but they were working their way through it all. And that was the end of that. And I thought, that's pretty good, the fact that we got to speak to him virtually. Little did I know what was going to happen the following day.
Then after a quick freshen up at the hotel, we headed off out to have some food, and we got to have a good look at the entire current range, including many of the novelties that have been released at Watches and Wonders and over the last few months.
And he said current there, in case you misheard, which I almost misheard. Carry on, Dave.
I did say current, yes. Some really cool watches to see, and many of the people there decided to keep them on their wrists for as long as possible, which did mean ending up having them overnight and wearing them the next day.
As long as you don't sleep with your hand under your pillow, because then the watch fairy, me, will come and steal it during the night and leave you 10 pence. So that was that. We went back to the hotel, we get a good night's sleep, we were up bright and early the following day, and we've been presented with boxes. And in those boxes, we had some goodies that we were asked if we could wear the following day. That was a pit top and one of these baseball caps, or, as it turned out when we turned up, another baseball cap that we could have chosen from. So we were all kitted, suited and booted, ready to rock, and we headed to Silverstone, which was an absolute bastard to get into.
We maybe got a little lost getting in, but eventually, after a few double backs and double backs again, we eventually got ourselves into the queue to get into the venue. That was a little bit sticky right up until the point where a special gate went up and our VIP badges that were stuck on the windscreen of our vehicle let us through into this special area.
We got inside and we got to a place called Paddock Club, which is a little bit like Fight Club, but we're allowed to talk about it. And in there, as I open my box of tricks, we got stuff. So I've already talked about the top, I've talked about the cap, I've talked about this cap, which was actually signed later on by Pierre. But inside, we got all kinds of goodies. First thing you want to do if you got a racetrack is get yourself some earplugs. We got them. Then we get more earplugs. And we saw the Red Bull area. And I thought, their earplugs look a lot better than our earplugs. So they're now our earplugs. We got lots of cool little bits and bobs. We got a little Moser car, vintage Alpine that is a USB. If I pop it open, you can see that. Yeah, lots of cool stuff. We got the entry ticket, the lanyards, the tags, ponchos. I'm Scottish. If there's some free stuff, I will blag it.
We couldn't forget Gavin, the video editor, so we maybe had to blag a couple of extra caps after, of course, asking permission. Why would we never ask permission? We did get them, and Gavin is a happy little individual now. He will be editing his videos for you to watch on YouTube whilst wearing his Alpine hat.
So from there, we caught with loads of people. We met Adrian, again from Bark and Jack. He was kicking around. We had a very brief chat with him before he was dragged off for Tudor duties. We saw Andrew from IWC, who was over at Oris prior to that. We caught with him, had a good long chat about different things that were happening, and then we bumped into a few people that you know.
We saw a fellow journalist, that being Scarlett, and another fellow journalist, Tracy Llewellyn. They were both there under the guise of IWC, and I believe we may have popped into, was it TGE as well, was there?
He was indeed, with his good lady and another YouTuber who I recognised, gave a nod to, but couldn't remember who they were. Then Edward came over and said, "Hey guys, do you want to head down and we'll catch up with the drivers?" And we didn't quite know what he meant, but what that did mean was we went down and we actually spent some time with Pierre in person. So that live video link up was great, but actually standing there chatting with him and asking him more in-depth questions in a more relaxed environment, as much as a relaxed environment can be at a racetrack, it was just really good. The amount of access that we got, it was such a privileged position. And for people like me and Dave that have been into cars for 2+ decades, Dave obviously competing, me doing all kinds of stuff with magazines, it was a little bit of a dreamscape. And we are just massively thankful for the opportunity. I'm zoning out thinking about exactly what happened as the gravity hits me of it all. So really, really appreciative of everything that happened. And these guys were just so down to earth for being a young F1 driver in his prime. You know, I was looking at his social media. I know that's not a judge of character, but it shows you the kind of influence that people have and the amount of attention they get. Each of his posts were getting 20, 30, 50,000 likes. And for somebody that young, that can affect them in a very bad way. They can think, you know, I'm untouchable, I'm on top of the world. He was such a down-to-earth guy, having loads of fun, and actually wearing a top that you commented on.
As he strolled in, very casual, as you would probably expect the average 20-something-year-old male to be, he came in wearing his French football top, and not just any old French football top, but in fact one with Zidane on the back. And if you know your soccer or your football, if you're from Europe, you will know that Zidane was one of the best French footballers, with a bit of a penchant for, quote, sticking the heat into
Glasgow kisses.
Absolutely. He was a man so famous, in fact, he even got to star in Family Guy, where he delivered a birthday cake to an old granny by sticking the head in her. So yes, the head being the head on top of the shoulders before anybody decides to put any other thoughts to that matter. But yes, outside of that, we got to have a chat, as Ricky said, with him, and we got to see all round the area, the pits. This was the big special part. We were issued, after we'd been there for a few years, a special golden ticket, a bit like Willy Wonka's chocolate factory, and it had VIP in it. And this ticket let us into the actual pit area. We got into the garages in and around where the team members hang out, where they chill out and relax. And we got into the pits proper, not the pit walk behind barriers where you get close but can only look. We got physically deep into the pits. We watched them practicing their pit stops and wheel changes. We watched them working on the cars. We watched how tidy and immaculate it is and got to get up close. We were told you can get as close as you want. Please, though, just don't touch. But we got some great photographs. We got to experience something that very few people actually ever get to experience. And we have to reiterate, thank you so much to Moser and, of course, all of the guys at the Alpine team for their hospitality and for putting up with two basically idiots from Scotland.
That is where the picture of us that appeared on Instagram in front of the car happened. It was down there. We just thought, yeah, no, why not? You know, nobody's really that busy. They're all on their lunch or whatever. We'll just jump down there and get a quick selfie that somebody else took for us. Therefore, not technically a selfie, but you know what I mean. No, the guys down there, the engineers, it was like watching synchronized swimming. The way the car comes in and you've got probably 20 people in and around it, not bumping into each other. A wheel comes off, you'd expect the guy with the tray with all the other parts to go on to get bumped and everything to go up in the air. No, it was just like magic. It was like robots. AI had taken control, just the way that it all moved in a kind of chaotic symphony that worked. That was amazing. Chatting with the team behind the scenes. We actually got to put on the headphones and listen to the drivers chatting with the race technicians back and forward. I'm coming out of this corner. It feels a little bit weird on this end. All these back and forwards that were happening that were kind of usually hidden from the public. We got to experience that, and it was enlightening. I'm not an F1 fan. I have always said that I like cars, I like motorcycles, I like this, that and the other. I'm not big on Formula One, but this gave me an appreciation that I didn't have before. And as Dave says there, you know, massive thank you to the guys at Moser for thinking of us to bring us along to something like that, because it's something I don't think we would ever have had the opportunity to do otherwise. And the access that we got seemed to be even better than other journalists from other brands. So it was a big shout out to them. And we should probably pay it back, Dave. We should probably talk about their latest release that only dropped a couple of days ago. And this is a purple watch That is not the purple watch that you may think it is, because we got to see that at Watches and Wonders. We didn't get to see this new one, but I wish I had.
Now, this is a watch, unlike the Tudors, that's not directly related to Formula One. What is this watch? This is the Pioneer Perpetual Calendar Concept Purple Enamel Sincere Platinum Jubilee Edition. Now, there is absolutely a mouthful for a name of watch. Sincere fine watches are a long established, in fact, it's a Platinum Jubilee, so 70 years they've been established, retailer of fine watches, as the name would give, in Singapore. And they are one of the official outlets for Moser. Now, they've been releasing a few different watches over the last few months to celebrate this anniversary with various brands, and now it's Moser's turn. And as Ricky says, we have a purple Fume enamel dial on this watch. Now, it also has a textured dial that the Fume and the enamel has been applied over. If you've seen the blue small seconds streamliner that they released a few months back, you will know the type of texture we're talking about here. So check out the show notes to see this one, because it's an amazing texture of a really deep purple, almost getting into black in some areas of the dial. Now, obviously, their perpetual calendar is famous for being very clean, very simple, with very little data. Not lots of dials all over the place, not lots of sub-registers, just really the date. All of the tricks, so to speak, are hidden under the dial. But on this one, rather than having the day indication on the dial, they've put it as a little cutout window beside the date window. So a little bit of a alternative take on the more traditional perpetual calendar that they've released before. And I say traditional as in Moser's traditional release on the perpetual calendar. It is nothing like traditional in the true sense of that word. Also, a two-part case. You have a red gold, 18 karat red gold that is case, in a matte finish, so not the polished finish you might expect from a gold case, but that's been paired with a black coated or a black DLC coated titanium case back. And also look closely at the lugs and you'll see a split lug with the inner area in titanium and the outer area in gold. So lots of little Easter eggs there on this watch. Using their hand-wound perpetual calendar movement, the HMC 808. Just a super cool watch. Only 20 of these, coming in at a not insignificant 130,000 Singapore dollars. So it's definitely not a pocket money watch by any count, but something a little bit different. And as Moser like to say, very rare. With only 20 of these pieces in existence, indeed, this will be a very rare watch. Size-wise and spec, just under 43mm, 42.8 to be precise, just over 15mm in thickness, 120 meters of water resistance, only 20 pieces, and 7 days of power reserve due to the twin barrel mechanism in that movement. So extremely good looking watch, very classy with the purple, and I'm not a fan typically of two material cases, but this one I think for me gets a pass.
Good looking watch, but is it as good looking as Brad Pitt, as noted by Shania Twain? Because we got to see him walking around at the F1, and there was a good reason for that.
It's no great secret that Apple are making a Formula One movie. What only was revealed at the weekend of Silverstone was the official name. And it's not the most original name, funnily enough, but probably is the most appropriate name. The name is simply F1.
That means they can do a sequel called F2.
I mean, you probably could, but it might be a little less exciting, a little bit slower. We have a movie that's being made that seems to be fully integrated into the real world of Formula One. They had a pit garage. This is the fictional APX GP Formula One team. As we were walking around seeing all these impressive garages, whether it be obviously Alpine or Ferrari or Red Bull or all of the other teams, there was another big team in the pit, that being APX GP. Completely fictional, only for the movie, but done in real time at a Formula One. They also had the characters. Obviously, Brad Pitt was in there. You've got a British up-and-coming star, Damson Idris, who plays one of the drivers. Brad Pitt, I believe, is playing a ex-racer, bit kind of out of the game, gets brought back into Formula One to make this team work. Directed by none other than Joseph Kosinski, who was famously the director of the second Top Gun movie, that being Top Gun Maverick. He is the guy who is making sure everything comes together on this, even to the point where the actors dressed up in their fictional team race suits are standing in line as things happen in real time at the Formula One. So it will be interesting to see how this movie pans out.
And I hear that this fictional team has got a real watch company involved in it.
So IWC are involved in this movie now. As we know, IWC are intimately involved in Formula One, especially being seen on the wrist of Lewis Hamilton, possibly Britain's or one of Britain's greatest racing drivers and one of the best Formula One drivers.
Well, maybe not for the last 945 days.
You're right, but of course, that duck was also broken at Silverstone, where he won for the 9th time in his career. And I believe that winning 9 times at Silverstone is a record-breaking event. No other race driver has won that event 9 times. So whilst not having won a Formula One race in, as you mentioned, 945 days, I'm sure he will love that number. He has finally got himself back on stream, obviously moving from his current team over to Ferrari next season. But it appears that he is also going to be appearing as himself in this movie. And IWC, as you mentioned, being one of the real world sponsors of a fictional Formula One team. And from all of the images that have been released so far of the movie, IWC has pride of place on both the car, on the race suit, and on the helmet of the race driver as well.
This definitely has been the F1 episode, but not just the cars, not just the racing, the tie-ins with watches, with people. And as we were actually heading to the circuit, we got news that Rolex might not be the official partner, official timekeeper of F1 going forward.
Rolex have been pretty much intimately involved with Formula One as a timing partner for 11 years. They don't specifically sponsor any team. They tend to be the overall FIA Formula One timing partner. If you watch Formula One, no matter what race you see, you will see the green hoardings with Rolex everywhere, with Rolex clocks placed at very prominent positions that are always going to get noticed. But it would appear that even though they're paying allegedly $50 million a year to be that headline sponsor, the time may be up for them. Now, Formula One has got much more popular over the last few years, and the rumours are that we will have LVMH coming in as a timing partner. Now, obviously, LVMH are a group. They own lots of brands. And you may say, well, Rolex surely are the biggest. Now, yes, Rolex are a big business, doing around 13 billion a year on their last reported figures. But LVMH are a big group at 86 billion euros turnover and having many watch brands under their belt. The question is going to be, of course, which of their watch brands is going to be that sponsor? I have my guesses. It's probably going to be Tag Heuer. That said, they have a few other brands up their sleeve. Maybe it might be one brand. Maybe it could be different brands. Maybe it might be that one brand like Tag Heuer. Or it could be one of many of their brands doing a rotating little pirouette.
I'm looking at the official show programme that allegedly costs £20. Didn't cost me £20, I'll tell you that. But yeah, anyway, putting that to the side, and I'm trying to think, have we missed anything? Yes, Nico Leonard was along that ill-fated day where we were infiltrated by Nico at Geneva just a mere few weeks back. Well, it turns out we now have the time to actually include that content in this show. So here is me and Dave, or more specifically, Dave, Matthew, and Nico shooting the breeze over at Watches and Wonders.
Mathieu, here, guys. The new managing director from Jules Landin. That's him. That's Mathieu.
Hi, everyone. How are you, Nico?
Doing well. How are you?
Good.
Yeah? Are you sick of my face yet after day 4 in a row? No?
Not yet.
No, not
I can take a bit more.
Well, fair enough.
No, so happy to be here, in Geneva, biggest watch show in the world, to unveil the latest Freak creation. You know that Freak means a lot to us. It's the watch that gave birth to modern watchmaking in 2001, right?
And I saw Ludwig walking around here. Did you see him? What a legend. Can we not get him in? It's so funny. Have you ever, we spent a lot of time together, Ludwig, Richard, myself, in Shanghai. He's funny man. Absolute genius.
He is a genius, Ludwig has been the mastermind behind the Freak and behind many of our other creations. We had the chance to have him today in Geneva. So yeah, really pleased with that. What do you think?
Do me a favor. Tell me the story about the watch. Tell me the story about the new Freak S.
So Freak S is the most complicated time only watch.
Yes.
Right? It is time only,
Yes.
minute, hours, but it is the most complicated because it's a carousel, so it's a movement that gives you the time. And it's the only watch in the world having two hearts, but being powered by an automatic movement.
Yes.
Other ones did it, manual one, because you need too much energy.
But that means you do need, if there's two hearts in there and it's being, means you need a differential in that.
There is. How do you know that?
How do you think I know that? Jeez.
So we have, actually, it's the smallest differential ever made. Usually it's something that you're going to find in the car. Here we have it in the watch to average the frequency of both escapements to give a perfect balance of 2.5 hertz. It's very technical. Actually, you know that the company with whom we partner with to manufacture that, they usually manufacture spare parts for artificial hearts. Needless to say that the beat of that watch will never stop, I guess.
Is this the best freak you've ever created?
The best, the most complicated, the most challenging, the best, yes.
Love it. And can I just point out that the pictures of this watch, in any way, shape, or form, do not do justice to this watch in any way, shape, or form?
I think you're saying that because of the light, the base plate is going to reflect. So what we wanted to do on the Freecast Nomad is to combine the best of the technology with one of the best ancestral métiers d'art. So we said, okay, we could do enameling, we could do also guilloché. So we decided this time to do a handmade guilloché hour disc. We call it point de diamant, so it has a shape of small diamonds. It's been a challenge because it's not the dial that we are doing the guilloché, it's actually the movement itself. And I think it has a beautiful reflection of, sandy gray effect. I love it.
I had the pleasure to wear this watch for a month prior to launch. So I enjoyed this watch. And funny enough, on the flight towards here, right, I handed the watch to these gentlemen. And as I'm like, I said, you know what? Photos do not do justice, but this is going to be your favorite watch of the show.
What I love about that edition also is, the material we've been using. It's really technical. You've got titanium, you've got carbonium. So it's a material that we upcycle from the aircraft industry. The wings of the plane that are no longer in place, not again used, are full of that. You've got also a bit of a goldish effect in it. So it's actual, gold. Absolutely love it.
I think it's one of my favorite watches that has been launched in a very long time. Now, Joe, thank you very much. I will take this back and I will see you later.
Your stand is one of the most visually impactful, I have to say. Much like your watches, everything about them jumps out at you. And there will be some notes. Check out the show notes to see what the stand's all about. But how have you felt the show has been, the vibe? What do you think of it? How have you enjoyed the people on the stand?
I mean, I absolutely love the vibe. The way the booth have been conceived is 100% open, so people can really circulate, within the booth. You've got basically this, but by 10 meters by 10 meters. So you can definitely, understand what we are talking about. Very excited. I think particularly this year, I see a lot of collectors, final consumers. At the end of the day, this is what matters the most. And really pleased for the first couple of days.
Amazing. And aside from this 10 by 10 meter massive movement, as you say, the consumers, the people who actually wear these, this show is opening up more. It's not just about press now. It's not just about the retailers. It's also about the people that wear it, who are the most important people.
Absolutely, and I want to engage more and more with the collector and the final consumer. What I did 3 weeks ago, I selected, about 1,000 clients in our database, and I just emailed them and said, if you are around Geneva, happy to invite you on the booth. And actually, a lot of them replied, either they could come or not. But yes, it's a great opportunity to engage with the existing and, the future customers.
I think they're obviously going to be really happy you're inviting them. I think a lot of your customers, your watches they're not mainstream in regards to the aesthetic. They're really specific and such a cool thing. So I'm sure they'll be delighted to come and, see it in real life. So not that long ago, you were on the show, talking about the brand, what you do and everything else. Now, at this show, you're not launching a huge number of new products, but you have given us a sneak peek. There's some things coming throughout the year. So tell us a bit about that kind of idea. Why have you decided to, spread those releases out over the period of a year?
First, we are not ready. So, we are releasing what we can start deliver to the market. I think it's important because one of the challenge that watchmaking had in the past, is showcasing pretty much everything. And then you've got the watches available, 1 year after that. That is not good enough. So we are showing what we can, actually deliver to the market later on. And the second thing is, obviously, we want to keep animating the rest of the year. We're going to be in Shanghai with a major show at the end of August. So we are keeping a few surprises for that occasion.
Yeah, and interestingly, in some of the things you've shown us and other people, you seem to be really open to taking on feedback where people have ideas, what they like, what they don't like so much, and trying to incorporate that into future products. Is that something you see as important for the collectors?
What I said to my team is, I don't want to hear what works. I only want to hear from you what we can improve. Same for the consumers.
Which I think is refreshing to hear. There are many brands who maybe aren't so keen to hear that criticism, but maybe that's what keeps you on that edge to push forward these kind of objects that we wear on our wrists that just keep us interested.
I mean, I also, at the end of the day, I don't really pay attention, to the way the other brands are doing their things. That's the UN way, and that's what matters.
No, absolutely. And, even from the discussion of the mix of materials and the sources of those materials, like you mentioned earlier, using parts from aircraft that are recycled, but you use many other avenues of materials as well.
UN has been, from the very early days, leading and pioneering, watchmaking, from the marine neck chronometer to the complication to the freak. And therefore, using, new and innovative materials is a way to tell that story that, we've been leading and pioneering the watchmaking industry since 1846.
Yeah, even in technologies and, regulating organs as well. You were the first guys on the market with many of those materials.
Yes, especially the silicon technology,
Yeah, which has revolutionized the watch industry in terms of chronometry.
It changed the game.
Totally changed the game. Well, thank you very much for just having a chat. If anyone hasn't listened to the full episode, check out the show notes for the link. You'll be able to sit down and listen to everything and hear what you have to say, but we'll have you on the show, no doubt more. Thank you very much for coming.
Thanks for learning. Thank you.
What we want to do is we want to tell you to check the show notes if you haven't already done that, to subscribe wherever you subscribe to things, if it's podcast players, if it's on YouTube, and if you're watching us on YouTube, a like, a comment would definitely not go amiss. Dave, what have we got in the back catalogue?
Well, there's lots for you to go and listen to and or potentially watch on YouTube. If you want to do the listening, go check out the latest Garrick episode. Also check out the Met Police that we talked to a mere few weeks ago, telling you how to hold on to your valuables and not be caught out or lose them. Also the episode with Ben Rousseau, talking all things horological and clocks. And of course we had Andrew Morgan on, telling us all about how life is going with him at Andrew Morgan Watches, of course formerly of Watchfinder, the hands guy, so he was giving us that full update. Outside of that, of course, we want you to contact us. Tell us what you want to hear. Tell us a story. You should be emailing us to info@scottishwatches.co.uk. And outside of that, I think, Ricky, all we've got to really say is goodbye.
You're right, Dave. So that is us. We've come to the end of our time together for this episode. But don't worry, we're back on Monday, then we're back on Thursday. Twice a week. What more do you want? So thanks for watching, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you again soon.